Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to February 2026. Keep It Spiritually Simple is going strong, but we'd like to go stronger. Each like, subscribe, share, and comment helps the algorithms share this program with others. So today I welcome Dr. Nancy on. We are going to get into some more of her book, The Ascendants. And we're happy to be on page 6 if anybody happens to have the book. In the meantime, thank you all for being here. Dr. Nancy, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, so how are things going out there out west, wherever you are in the universe?
Well, it was interesting because it was colder in Florida yesterday than when it was here in Sedona. So it's that's unusual.
Yeah, that's very
Um,
very unusual, but I think we're getting hit with interesting weather patterns. Now, whether they're natural or created,
yeah.
um, is another story. But either way, we have to deal with it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Regardless, so we can get into, the anger of where it's coming from, or we can say, okay, it's here. How do I best equip myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. So let's get into it, girlfriend.
Okay, so it's the last entry on page 6.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and read it, and it just flows a little over to page 7, the top of page 7. Um, Purity is raising the consciousness from the physical world to the higher spiritual dimensions beyond the world of matter, time, and space. A consciousness that has awareness beyond space will not require movement of the body to experience objects on the other side of the room, planet, or galaxy. A consciousness sitting on the couch will not need to move the body in order to touch the flowers located on the table. Pure awareness realizes it is within all, seen and unseen. So, first of all, we're talking about non local, and then we're also talking about bilocation, is another aspect of the consciousness awareness. And rishis and yogis in the East they could spend an entire lifetime working on these psychic aspects of the mind, which is bilocation, levitation. But just knowing that your consciousness is non-local is huge, because this is where I think we've all had this experience where we're thinking about somebody and then they call you and you're like, oh my gosh. So it's very interesting how our consciousness is very non-local, because it can think of somebody who could be across the planet and all of a sudden they feel your frequency, your consciousness connecting in with theirs. And so yes, I think that there's a lot to be said, because we always think of ourselves in the physical body where we have to, but we're using our consciousness all the time in a non-local format, because we can go back into the past of a memory. We can think of something that's coming up in the future, an event that we've got planned. So our consciousness is constantly moving in these in time and space, but it can also move outside of time and space. And that's where people go into meditation. They'll go within and they'll go into these other dimensions, upper dimensions, and have these intermystical experiences.
Okay. So are we also talking about telepathic?
Yes, that's an aspect of the mind. These are all aspects of the mind, because when you're talking about time, space, and matter, you're talking about the mind. When you get into consciousness, where you get above the mind, then you're getting into the non-dual aspects, and you're now going into just pure soul consciousness awareness
Okay.
aspects of yourself. But when you're in time, space, and matter, you're definitely in your mind. But so when you get into these different aspects, that is the power of your mind. And telepathic abilities are mental abilities, which I do believe as time goes on, we're going to be picking those up more and more in the population, because our light codes are being turned on in our DNA, and the light coming in stronger and stronger on the planet. And this whole thing that's going on the planet is this is going to be continuing for thousands of years as we get more and more deeper into the age of Aquarius.
So I feel like the word transformation is coming in. So we're in this early stages of transformation
Mm.
of what the world was and what we're setting the stage for it to become. So we're still in that, and I'm seeing a garbage disposal, like it's just whirling and twirling things to make change in frequencies, in vibration, in what's coming through from above, what's coming through from Mother Earth. And we're all caught up here in the middle of this, what sometimes feels like an energetic cyclone of energy. And I know that you and I really went like totally intuitive last show and talked a lot. So if you viewers have not seen previous shows, especially the one we just did like 2 weeks ago, we kind of get into the solar storms, the
Mhm.
energy, the frequencies, some of the things that we can expect. So it sort of fits in here with what it is that you're reading, even though you wrote this book a while ago.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was after COVID, and I think COVID really changed a lot. It really opened up a lot of awareness for a lot of souls on the planet. I think there was a lot of trust in the healthcare system, the government systems, the different systems, and a lot of those systems failed during COVID because, or people felt they failed because they were told a lot of misinformation about being 6 feet apart, and they come to find out, well, where did that come from? Well, it was just made up. There was no studies, there was nothing. I mean, we never had this type of type of a virus come through our worldwide, and so I think that the the lies and deception really understandably upset everybody because we were told things that weren't true. And therefore it actually caused us to start questioning more the people in authority, and because we assumed they had our backs, and then come to find out there was agendas that was taking place behind the scenes. And I think it's good for us to question authority. I think it's good for us to not always assume that everything is running smoothly, because we really aren't informed in a lot of things, and we're actually held in the dark and in a variety of different areas. So I think it was good for a lot of people to start questioning and not just assume, and therefore be their own personal advocate, whether it be their health or in other areas of their life.
And while you're saying that, I'm thinking about the times during those few years where so much was coming to the surface for people to see.
Mm.
I was, for me personally, extremely shocked at the gullibility and those who did believe. And this took things as if it was gospel, so to speak. I
Mhm.
remember, I think it was a Thanksgiving of 2020, and we were all gathering, and it was at my sister's house, and she checked on the CDC website before she even organized this gathering. And it was wear masks inside, and then it was no singing, no singing,
I never
because
heard
it would
that one.
spread it.
Wow.
And I personally had a family member having a very monumental birthday. And I just remember watching my entire family, which is a very large crowd, and I felt like I was in a different zone, and I was in shock of all these, what? Like, and then
Mm.
I went, oh, hell to the no. Everybody outside to the garage, open the garage doors. We are singing, we are lighting candles, and we are singing happy birthday. And of course,
Good.
later, you know, I think some of the family members are kind of embarrassed that they believe something so silly, but they were ready to stake their lives on it. Oh, absolutely not. Don't take your mask off unless you want to pull it down and stuff your face, close it up and chew. It's like, okay, okay. So anyway, this is the part of the beginning, I think, of the crumbling of the systems,
Hmm.
to bring in all this new energy that, like you said, is going to continue to transform for thousands of years. So we're just in this beginning shaky,
Yes.
breaking things up in order to bring in new.
Yeah, I think it's an important phase. I think a lot of us light workers and light warriors, that's why we're here. I keep hearing this. Excuse me. um, is that it's really dark. This is like one of the darkest times on the planet because we're exiting the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, and going into the Golden Age. And when the system is so corrupt that it requires boots on the ground souls to come in and do this type of work where we hold in the light. Excuse me, all of a sudden my throat got dry.
That's okay. Tis
And
the season.
yes.
Nope,
Yeah.
take your time.
And so it's it's definitely a time where it's going to open up more and more people's eyes, and I think that's needed because business as usual just doesn't work anymore. And so people are going to start to ask the big questions. I call them the big questions, which is, who am I? Why am I here? Why here? Why now? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's my purpose work? And that type of thing. And I think that's really why we came to the Earth School, many of us, is because we came in with goals and assignments. And so now it's time for us to get to work and really because the frequency is changing on the planet. And therefore, those that are struggling this time need to get with the program, basically, because it's going to be a very bumpy ride for those that don't and force themselves to stay in a system that's disappearing. It's changing, and it's going to be changing rapidly as we go through these next few years. Um, so, I mean, there's talk of the monetary system being adjusted greatly, and many other systems that's going to be changed because they're corrupt. They've been corrupt for a long, long time, and they cannot continue on a planet with a very high frequency. And the type of people that will be elected will be of a very high frequency because who we have now, we don't really, you ask anybody, and people, it's kind of like the laughing joke is nobody trusts a politician. If you're a politician, you're not respected because they've had, centuries of this going on of backdoor deals and all this stuff, and the public not being, the transparency's not there. And so we really are at a stage where nobody trusts anybody. And I don't believe that it's going to actually be a system where it'll be councils, where you don't have just one person running the whole country like a president or prime minister. It'll be an actual council. And everyone on that council will be on that council based on their vibrational frequency, which will have to be of a very high form. And that's what ancient civilizations, and I'm talking about even before pre-recorded time, back when we had these other yugas like the golden age and the silver age. That's what they did. They had these councils, and they knew that it was fair and it was just because these people were not corruptible because their frequency was so high. So it'll be, that's an adjustment that'll need to take place over time as well, because the system as it is supports those that are not, how do I say this? Um, the way we have it now, it's set up where the people who have a high frequency can't seem to get into the system to change it. And so the system has to be completely revamped, and all the systems that are have gone pretty much, they're corrupt. And so they have to be completely revamped. And some of them just completely redone. I mean, they're so corrupt that you can't even fix them. So a new system has to come into place.
So we got to work through the density. But when you're talking about people letting go, when it's the only program the only system our brains want to hold on to it for dear life and almost sink with the ship. And
Yes.
what Nancy's saying and what we're hearing, from multiple different people, including our own higher self, is we have to let this go and trust that we are going to go into smoother times, but not without the bumps. So be ready to ride the bumps, but you're going to be okay. Just don't
Yeah.
hold on to old programs that don't serve any longer. Allow them to crumble and the new to be built.
Yes. Yeah, it's always scary when there is a big change, like a monetary system or a voting system or a political system or a banking system or educational system, or we could just go through all the healthcare system, all the different systems. And yeah, there's a lot that really needs to be updated. I think the public, as they awaken, are just not going to be willing to participate. They'll just say, I just don't want to participate in a corrupt system because I'm forced to be corrupt in order to survive in a corrupt system. And I don't want to be corrupt. I don't want to be in this type of a system that's unhealthy, it's unbalanced, it's toxic, it's not really fair. So I think as people wake up, I think more is going to be demanded of those in power, that they're like, this just isn't acceptable anymore. We don't want to live like this anymore. And so I think we see a little bit of it in eco communities where people are, they get a patch of land and then they get a group of people together and they share the land in the sense of the housing, the crops, the, everything. And they're pretty much self-sufficient as much as they can be. There are things that they do have to buy off the property, such as, like, I don't know, Q-tips came to my mind or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we are definitely going to start seeing more and more changes. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think as we go through these years, things are going to start really. So much light is coming to the planet that I think that so much of us are going to go, wow, how did I put up with living in a system like this for so long? Well, we a lot of us weren't awake enough to ask for anything different. And a lot of people aren't going to wait for the government to change. They're just going to change their lifestyle themselves.
Yeah, it's all about the restructuring and allowing the restructuring. It's what's coming to my mind is when your highway is too small and they're trying to add a byway or widen the road and add some extra lanes. Well, you got to narrow it down and you're going to go through a long period of time of road construction, you
Yeah.
know? And then you get used to that road construction and then they remove all the barriers and you have this new road and you're like, oh, okay, cool. It's,
Yeah.
but we have to allow this reconstruction to occur and this restructuring from levels that are unseen, right? But we as humans who are participating have to get off this old ship before it sinks and say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm willing to float for a little bit, see what comes along.
Yes.
All righty.
Well, we'll continue on. The first entry on the top of page 7. You are being guided, and the path will bring many options with variables. Choose the highest path, for you are never limited. Take a deep breath and go within. Feel the peace and silence as you connect with your soul. You are the love of Source. You can experience this love at any moment when your attention connects with your heart. Source is present everywhere and within all. And, when I read this last sentence, source is present everywhere and within all, that's such a high spiritual truth that we're not taught, because we live in specific countries. And so we have nationalism, where, of course, you're taught that your country's the best and, and do what you're told according to your government, the country that you were born in. But really, we're all brother, sister souls. And this whole thing is artificial, of these boundaries of these different countries. And even then, those boundaries have been changed after wars, especially after World War II. There was a lot of boundary changes. And so countries are created and modify their boundaries all the time. And so it's really, it says it's just very artificial about having these different boundaries. And so yeah, it's so interesting because we grow up with these principles and concepts and we think they're so solid, but somebody created them. Somebody woke up one morning of a position and says, okay, we're going to create this system, and everyone's required to participate in the system. And you thinking to, I used to think to myself, I'm like, okay, I am a soul that incarnated on the earth, but I'm free. Really? I mean, who makes up these rules that I'm told I have to abide by? I just and and if you don't abide by certain rules, okay, well, we're going to throw you in jail. I'm like, why? I just don't want to participate in some of these systems that are corrupt. And so some of us are starting to wake up and go, where did all these rules come from? There's these, I call them stupid rules. Some of them are just so ridiculous that, I mean, obviously for safety, with driving and stuff like that, of course, you need to abide by the highway rules and stuff like driving rules. But, yeah, just what you were talking about. This is the 6 feet apart or wearing the mask indoors. If somebody makes up these rules, and now it's like required, or we take it as gospel, and really a lot of times we never really question, well, who came up with them, or what was the reasoning, or what was the research, and sometimes when you go back and you start to do the research as to why, there was an agenda as to why. Um, and so yeah, it's very interesting. So I mean, I could give some examples, but I'd probably get in trouble if I gave some examples. But I think we all kind of know, because we've lived in these systems that were created at some point in the past, and now we're reevaluating these systems. Um, and so I'll give you an example. It just comes to my mind is, since marijuana now has been legalized, the federal government, what does that mean for all the people who were arrested, given a criminal charge for having so much in their pocket, marijuana, let's say, in their pocket, and now are they releasing them? Are they going to expunge their record? Do they have this for the rest of their life that they have to deal with? Because I mean, there's no talk of this, this part of the aspect of it now. Um, and I think those are things that need to be looked at. But at some point, somebody made a decision that said, well, this particular plant, marijuana, is bad for you. And so we're going to make it illegal. And therefore, now anybody who was supposedly a free citizen who had this, let's say, in their possession, was put in jail, given a criminal record, even though we know that marijuana doesn't kill people, it doesn't hurt people. In fact, it has healing properties and relaxation properties. And so somebody made this decision based on false information. There probably was some sort of a reason that was, whether they were misinformed or an agenda or whatever. But therefore, it all of a sudden became law, and then we were forced to live under this rule that a lot of people didn't agree with, and that's why they continued with what they were doing prior, whether it was growing it or using it for their personal usage, and or selling it to their friends or what have you. So, and that's what I was talking about with these rules, that they come and go. These laws come and go. And so and these borders kind of come and go. And I even talk about daylight savings time, about how that didn't exist before World War II. That was created after World War II because they wanted more time in the evenings to be in their victory gardens. And even then, I remember as a kid that the daylight savings time was back in, I think it was like the beginning of October, and over the years it's been moved. First, it was the first Monday of the month of October. Then it was like the second Monday. Well, then people were showing up late for work because the daylight savings time was on a Monday. So, oh, we can't have that. That's not good for fetal activity. So we got to move it to a Sunday. So if you're late for church, who cares? The government doesn't seem to care. If they just want to make sure you weren't late for work. So people don't remember that. The daylight savings times used to be on a Monday. You changed your clocks on the Sunday night, and then it went into effect. So people were an hour late to work. So that's why they changed it to Friday night. So it was, I'm sorry, excuse me, Saturday night, and and so then they kept moving it back further into October. And now we have it the first week of November. So even they're playing around with the time change. So time, matter, space, all this, borders and all these laws. So I think it's good because people are starting to question everything, and they're starting to question the laws. They're starting to relook at the laws. And yeah, so what is your feelings on all this?
Well, I mean, as far as daylight savings times, it never made any sense to me because it would, for me, with my kids growing up and me growing up, it was always the night before Halloween, right? And so I was like, what does this make sense to take the clock back and then have all these little children out on the streets in the dark? So it
Yeah.
just recently changed in the last year or two. So now it's the week after. So it's whenever it's convenient. And also, we know that so many of these laws are placed into effect without public knowledge that this is going on, right? So we don't really necessarily have the right to vote for it unless you're looking at the small print somewhere that says, oh, by the way, hey, there's a town meeting, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Or a global meeting that says, hey, you can cast your vote if you choose to. But I think because of COVID, we have more and more and more people becoming aware and
Yes.
more groups and committees being formed in order to take place and announce things so that, hey, by the way, guys, and then of course with social media and things like that, it allows you, instead of calling everyone or texting, you can post it out so a wide variety of friends,
Mhm.
foe, and others can see it.
Yes. Yeah. It's yeah, I think questioning is part of the process of the evolutionary um scale we're going through. And I think we're going to question the type of the integrity of those that are in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's is huge in this evolutionary process. Is if you have corrupt people in charge, you've got a corrupt system. So you're going
Yes.
to have to really start going through and placing people who are non-corruptible and have a very high standard in these positions. And that's really we're gonna see a lot of changes as well.
Yes. A lot.
So the third, I'm sorry, the in the middle of the page on page 7, that entry, excuse me,
That's all right.
nothing
We're
is
both
wasted.
doing it today.
I know. I think there's something in the air with
Well,
everything this
there's a
winter
lot of
time.
dust. There's a lot of, again, this weather changes that's stirring things up.
Yes.
Our bodies are trying to release what doesn't serve anymore. So, I look at mucus as a protector. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's saying, hey, we're trying to gather here to get some stuff out so it doesn't go into your bloodstream or whatever. So clear your throat away. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, also, as we were talking off camera before we went online, is this full moon, this past full moon has just been really quite something. I haven't been able to sleep. I don't know. Ever since 2012, I haven't been able to sleep well on full moons. They've just gotten so powerful. Every full moon seems to get more and more powerful. So, yes, um, nothing is wasted, and all events are used for your soul as deep wisdoms. Change and transition are benefits to your soul. The expanded consciousness of your soul remembers all the created identities and your origin. Now, this one, gosh, we could go a million different ways on this one. But as far as your expanded consciousness of your soul remembers all the created identities and your origins. So it's all the threads of your previous lives and lives, not just here on the earth plane, but in other galaxies and other timelines and that sort of thing. So yeah, and I think we get some of these bleed throughs that come through in this lifetime where we'll have these epiphanies and we'll go, or a deja vu's and these experiences where they, gosh, this seems familiar. They'll go to a different country on vacation, they'll go, gosh, I've been here before, but I've never been here before in this lifetime. And then all these memories start flooding in. Or some souls come in at a very young age, very aware of what their previous life was. Um, and I think sometimes it's needed, sometimes because it's needed for this lifetime, it affects us, but other times we're meant to forget because we need to really focus on what our goals were and what we needed to accomplish in our lessons in this particular lifetime. So it just depends.
Well, this one's really powerful because, um, again, I don't pre-read the book. So when you read, then all these
Yep.
Sunday night, I was laying in bed having a conversation with my guide team, and I was like, original soul. But so if you pass through this lifetime, you go back to your original form, which is your original soul, the essence of the consciousness of source. But and then you go into this decompression chamber and you empty out all of this lifetime, the most recent lifetime, right? But do you go back to the innocence of that soul? And I was laying there having this contemplated conversation, and I was shown, well, let's say you're an original soul, and then you pick up this play, and you pick the character in which you're going to play in this play, and you step into that lifetime and you play it, and then you exit, you go to decompression, you go back to soul. But if you've done this hundreds of thousands of times, how does the original soul not have what I'm going to call breakthrough or leakage or assume part of that character in so many of those lifetimes? Doesn't that kind of create a different type of soul because it's had so many lifetimes that affect it? I didn't quite get the answer. I almost did a video on it, but I haven't done any single videos in a while, but I'm getting tons and tons of messages. But when you just read that, I'm like, so we go back to our original form, is what I'm thinking. But you have, I mean, you think of just actors, right? Just actors that go in and play multiple roles and become extremely popular in their roles. And some actors are so much better than others when they take on a character. But how does that a character not at least affect their original self before they stepped in to that role? So again, nighttime, all this stuff is going through me until spirit's like, shut your face, Sandy. You need to sleep. And then I have to shut it down. But what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's a really that's a good one. I haven't I was just trying to sort through maybe what could come through on that. But that's I think that I think both are true. I think sometimes we think it has to be this or that or but I think both are true. I think you can tap into on the other side your true essence, which is basically pure source energy. I don't think you ever change that true aspect of yourself, which is pure source energy, where you look, where you come to know as a God realized soul that that is truly, ultimately your true identity is source. And all these other characters you took on was an acting, it's, I say this in my first book, Art of Divinity Revealed, where it's all source manifesting in many different forms. And source was at one point just itself. And therefore, it fractured itself. It came into many different pieces, meaning it created all these different souls, aspects of itself, so it could experience itself. So we are all source manifesting in different forms, and therefore source, how we like to tune into the TV, we love a good drama, and we love, all these different characters and how they go through all these difficulties and how they win the day, and the hero's journey and all that type of thing. And so at the time we forget our identity, so we can get lost in this illusion of separation, and because you can't be separate from that which you are made of. And so it's really source having these dreams. So our true identity is really source, and therefore we pretend we're not separate, that we're not an aspect of source. And so therefore we may remember these dreams, but that's just a character we played in that particular lifetime, in that track of time, that time track. And so I think both are true. I think that when you're in this reality, yes, it's true. You are in physical form, you are fully divine, but you're also fully human, and you are having this experience. And we also need to remember this is our lessons, and this is important while we're here. But also that, again, it's not our true identity. You know, Sandy is not your true identity. Really, source is your true identity. So I think both are true in my opinion. I think we play in this reality, and we take on these roles and these characters, and I think it strengthens us. I think it creates so much within us. Our souls require so much experience because of the different assignments that we're handed in the next lifetime, that's required of us. Like one of them is, we talked about it on a prior episode. If you are in training to be a spirit guide for souls that come to the Earth School, you need to have had hundreds of lifetimes, because you have to have experienced so many different things. Because when you're on the other side as a guide, and you're going to be helping this person prepare them to incarnate in the physical form, sometimes for the very first time, they don't know what to experience. And a lot of times what they're going to have to go through here, and then they're the guide that follows them all the way through. I mean, there's just so much to that, that life experience is so important. Or your next assignment may be in a far-flung galaxy off somewhere, and if you've never experienced being in physical form, that's going to definitely be, you need that as a plus to help you. But there's just so much that we're experiencing that we are not even aware of until we cross over the veil, and translate, take our last breath, and go back through life review. And we're like, oh my gosh, I never realized there was so much more to this life than I was even processing consciously and subconsciously, because it was being recorded at the soul level. And but that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Well, it's really powerful because if you think about, you'll hear some actors say, I stepped into the role so deeply that I couldn't speak to people for hours after filming because
Hmm.
I needed to decompress. But we have to also remember that those actors can take years to make a film, right?
Yes.
So they're stepping in and
Yeah.
out of that. So if we think about it as, you know, me, a soul living as Sandy in this earth time, and then having all these breakthroughs of being in multiple different lifetimes, but yet my original self is source. It's never any of those characters,
Hmm.
is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask the actor, when this person is playing that particular role, they are that person in that movie, in that role, and that is a reality in that movie. And it's interesting you bring this up, because I had a conversation a couple of months ago about somebody who, they were talking, I'm trying to remember the actor's name, and he said that after doing so many excuse me, movies back to back, that he had to take 6 months off to remember his own personality, because he had taken on so many other people's personalities, these roles as these other characters, their personalities, their likes and dislikes, how they walked, how they, everything. And that this person had to take 6 months off to remember who his, to get his own personality back. I mean, it's like we don't think about this, that they can get so deeply involved that they forget their true identity as meaning their own personality. And it's kind of the same thing in this third dimensional reality that we step into. We forget we're a piece of source. That's our true identity. But we take on these roles. We're a mother, we're a wife, we're an employee, we're a sister, we're a brother, we're a cousin, we're a child, we're, all these different roles that we play, that we get lost in this illusion. And we're meant to get lost in the beginning because we have to experience it and take it to be real. But then as we start to wake up and go, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. because I do believe Source wants us to remember that we're spiritual royalty. You're not this mere mortal, and you're not this mere whatever Canadian, American, British. These are different identities that are false identities. But and so when you start waking up, part of that process is not just questioning everything around you, but questioning who your true identity is and why you came here. And that's when I think it gets really exciting, because then you start to really start to understand the deeper wisdoms, not based on something that was just told to you, which is programming. And now you can start to learn spiritual truths, actually truths of your true identity, your purpose work, why you came here, and then things start to make sense.
Well, that was really powerful what you just said, because what was flooding through for me was, who was I before mom, and who am I without children around, or who am I before this job defined me, right? And then how do you step out of that? And we're getting into this because what do we have, 30 million baby boomers turning 65 in 2030. So you've got this huge influx of humans trying to figure out who the heck they were before retirement, right? Like who are they now after retirement, if they're allowed to retire? But we do take on so many roles as just a human. And anyway, that's just powerful. That's just powerful.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
there's going to be a huge awakening in that particular demographic as well, because now
Mhm.
they have the time to start really sorting through as the world starts to really change around them. And that if it's used wisely, that freedom of that time to really, now they've raised their families, they've had their careers, and now that's when a lot of people do start to ask the deeper questions, because they're getting closer to going to the other side. And um, and they start realizing it's like, I spent all my life at this point with all these different roles and responsibilities, and now I have this freedom to really start asking these deeper questions and start searching and exploring them. And so we're now going to start to see that more people are going to be turning towards spiritual wisdom, spiritual truth, spiritual classes, spiritual understandings, and that type of thing, which is actually going to help in this process of, because so much is changing on the planet, people start to ask the deeper questions.
Yes, very powerful. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, let's go on to one more before we have to close out and start another segment.
Yes. Well, this one will be quick. It maybe, I don't know. Sometimes the one-liners are pretty deep, and this one is 3 words. It's a three. It's one sentence, and it says, "Compassion heals you." And it just gets into the what rolls through my mind really quickly is Jesus is quoted as saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." When people are unawake, they make choices that they're not aware of their behavior and how it affects other souls around them. And so, compassion plays such a deep role in our life, because so many times we hold on to so much pain and suffering, difficulties, hurts, and it just gets embedded actually into our bones, into our muscles, into our nervous system. And then at some point, if it's not released, then it turns into illness. And that's where I'd mentioned this on a prior episode, that the shamans around the world will say that illness is basically, it has to do with this spiritual imbalances in within us. And I think when we're talking about compassion, we're also talking about harmony, bringing harmony in our life. And what does that look like? Well, true harmony is when you're at a state of being that is just peace. You let it go. It's okay. What is this going to matter after you've left the earth plane? Was it part of my life journey? to experiences? What was, and what can we glean from a lot of these experiences? Because part of it is we wouldn't be who we are today had we not gone through all these difficulties and challenges. And and that's not to say it's not easy, but it's definitely, most people learn through difficulty than they do with ease. And so that's why so many challenges are handed to us, and we have to go through so much density and difficulties on in the earth school. And like I said, the earth school is green beret training for a lot of souls. We went through a lot of schools on the other side of the veil, and we said, okay, we're ready to be tested. They're like, all right, we're sending you to the earth school to be tested. Boy, will you be tested. And how are you going to live your life? What are the choices with all the temptations and everything? How are you really going to live your life? And I was having a conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago, and I said, just make a decision on based on how you feel. Do you have peace about it? If you don't have peace about it, then it's your higher self saying, I wouldn't go forward. Even if your mind's saying, oh, no one would know, or oh, this is the way it's done, and don't worry about it. If it's not the right thing to do, regardless, um, that's a test. And so I think we get so used to living in a corrupt system that we're it's very difficult. But I think ultimately we have to live with ourselves and our own choice, and that's part of the tests that we are faced with down here in a very difficult, dark system. And that's where our light really shines. It's like the stars. You can't see the stars unless there's darkness out. And but yeah, I mean, compassion, gosh, compassion comes in so many different ways. What does compassion mean for you, Sandy?
Well, for me, it's a softening of an energy, and it floods with the feelings of really understanding and just being present with whatever is happening around you. And usually compassion comes in when there's hurt or trauma or something around you. So you have understanding and don't take a defensive mechanism or approach to things. I feel like it's just, to me, compassion is letting in this energy that has more of a exhale of love, an exhale of understanding, an exhale of acceptance of what is.
What you're describing is like Mother Teresa, which the people in India call her the Bodhisattva. I mean, that just means an, a soul came in to show us what unconditional love really looks like,
Mhm.
and true compassion. And so here we have this corrupt system, and this soul incarnates and comes in, and in spite of all the difficulties that she went through trying to set up her charity there, she went through, if people have read her lifetime, she went through a lot of difficulties. And she even says that when she was alive, that she called it the adversary even tempted her to stop, don't go forward, because she didn't have the funding right away from the Vatican. She lived on donations. I think it was for at least 4 years, and during that 4 years it was very difficult to keep going in what the work that she was trying to do. And then women from around the world said, I want to be a part of this. And that's where she was creating an order of Sisters of Charity. And so this is just a great example. It's funny, she came to my mind. She's such a great example. And of course, she wins the Nobel Prize for Peace. But so this is just an example to say, hey, we don't have to play the game in a dark system. We don't have to necessarily live like everybody else does in a corrupt system. We can stand out and refuse to live in a corrupt system and do it our way, which is the right way, the truthful way, live by truth. And what a great example we end up showing to the world. And I think so many people are afraid to stand up for truth because, is it popular, or is it really going to make a difference? Well, in a lot of the saints and mystics, their life was such a great example, and that's why they stood out in a corrupt
Mhm.
system, because they refused to participate and they did what they could to bring light to a dark planet.
Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna end on that because that
Yes.
was very well said. And thank you. And I just feel like when we have compassion, there's just this undiluted flow of love. And it just puts so many things off to the side of rational reasoning and puts us into a feeling of this realm of, I don't know if you want to call it unconditional, it's just a feeling of flowing love and just being there and being present and accepting of what is. So I love that. Well, Dr. Nancy, we're going to end right here because that was a powerful note. So everybody, Keep It Spiritually Simple is going to be continuing with multiple episodes with Dr. Nancy. Please don't miss them. So hit subscribe, share, hit a comment. We might be able to answer it. So we love each and every one of you, and thank you for being with us today. So Dr. Nancy, say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.